Good evening and welcome. Yes, it's Friday, it's 8 o'clock, and that means it's time for Buster's Virtual Jazz Club. Welcome one and all. I hope you've had a great week. We're live on YouTube now. This is going out live to the infinity and beyond, and we have a chat box there, so if anybody like to leave a message, it'd be nice to know there's someone there. Oh, hello David Harvey. Welcome. Lovely to see you, David. Thanks for leaving a message. I hope the book's coming along. We're looking forward to seeing that. And hi, Real Sonic. And anyone else who wants to leave a message, that'd be nice to see you. So we're live, it's working. Before I go any further, I'd also have to say a big thank you to our new Patreon supporter, Hugh Mitchell. So thank you very much, Hugh, for signing up. That is very much appreciated. So my guest this evening has been a key feature of the UK jazz scene for several decades as a prominent member of many stellar ensembles featuring international jazz stars including Django Bates, Ian Ballamy, Kenny Wheeler, Norma Winston, Julian Arguelles, Nicky Isles, Mike Walker and many more. He's also first call for visiting American jazz greats such as Joe Lovano, Peter Erskine, Kirk Lightsey and Adam Nussbaum. Since the mid-1980s, when he was a member of the influential big band Loose Tubes, he's remained closely associated with many of its leading figures. Live work has taken him all over the world with appearances at many of the leading venues and jazz festivals. He can be heard on a simply staggering number of albums, and unfortunately we're only going to have time to dip into a very small sample of his output tonight. But I'm very pleased to say he's here with us now, live on YouTube. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the amazing Steve Watts. Hello, mate.
Hi, Buster. Nice to be here. Yeah, I'm good, thanks. Yeah, good.
Thank you. Thanks for coming on the show. It's a great pleasure to have you on here. And thanks for giving up your evening and sharing your time and your music with us. It's absolutely amazing that you've been in so many great bands and produced so much great work. We've got a few videos to show, which I'm very excited about, and a few audio tracks as well, some beautiful music. But first of all, just how's things going? It's been a hell of a year, hasn't it? Is anything picking up for you just yet? I know some people are starting to creep out and do a few gigs, aren't they? Yeah,
I've not been doing gigs as such, but I've been busy doing some teaching, online teaching.
Good.
And Adam Glasser, very good piano player and harmonica player, lives around the corner from here. So, and he's been having regular plays in his front garden.
Oh,
so
lovely! Yeah.
So I've done a few of those. Yeah, he's great. Yeah, he's really good. So I've been doing a few of those. And a couple of weeks ago, I was in the house band for the BBC Young Jazz Musician competition semi-finals. So that was really nice. I got to play for 3 days.
Where was that held? Was that where did
it was just in a studio. It was filmed. I don't know whether they'll use any of it for the final program. So
like a pre-record.
Yeah, it's kind of and it was just to see who the 5 finalists were going to be out of 20 or 21 or something like that. Right. So it was great for me. I got to play in a block for the first time in ages with Hugh Warren and Rod Youngs, and then a succession of amazing young players who are just astounding. Yeah,
it's astonishing, isn't it? The facility and technique and ability these people have at such a young age now.
It's amazing. It just keeps getting better all the time. I mean, it really is. It's astonishing what to a certain extent.
I mean, obviously they've put the work in, but they've got the power of the internet in the last 20 odd years or whatever, or 30 years.
Yeah.
Around. I guess that helps a lot, doesn't it? That flood of information that's out there, and they can just check everything
Absolutely.
out.
Well, there's a tremendous amount of stuff there that if you're interested, you can access very easily. Yeah. But also, I think one of the factors in this whole thing is that it's now jazz education has been around for sufficiently long that a lot of the graduates from 20 years ago are out there in schools, you know, or 5 years ago or 10 years ago. There's a lot of people out there in schools.
Filtered through, yeah.
So it's kind of spread.
They're starting younger, yeah.
Yeah. So you know, if you're musical and you're lucky enough to be in a school where someone who knows about this stuff is teaching, which is increasingly likely, then
I guess it's still a bit of a
can get it. You can get it at a young age, you know. So it seems that people come through at a very young age these days.
Well, I mean, we started a jazz school at my local music centre 3 or 4 years ago, and seeing those kids come on the way they have in that time has been very encouraging. And I've always said it, and I've always known it, and the fact is, kids, they love jazz, they love it because it's you know, they can do their own thing, you know, and essentially it's the antithesis of what the alternative of music education can be summed up as: that was wrong, do it again. Right. Whereas when you say to them, well, you know, it's like, you can do that or you can do this, but you can make it up yourself. And I found they love that because it's like playing a game, you know, and they improvise all the time in the playground, right? It's the most natural thing in the world. So you just kind of have to give them a few parameters and they run with it and they have a great time. Yeah. Oh, we've got a few more people saying hello. Hello, Izzy Postil and Peter and Liz Norton. Oh, that's very nice to know you're out there. Yeah, great. So, well, that's a very good point, and it's great to see the standards raised amongst young musicians, and it can only be a good thing, can't it?
Oh, it's great.
What I thought we'd start with is a video, and we'll go straight in with some loose tubes. And we've got this clip now from Ronnie Scotch from the reunion series of gigs, which was really unfortunately I didn't manage to get a ticket for that, which was a real shame. But I remember the gigs happening and what a big deal it was. And I think some people watching this show will know, but some might not quite appreciate how big a deal Loose Tubes was to the British jazz in the 80s when it started. But that whole idea of getting back together, and so I was just going to ask, you know, how did it feel? It must have been quite strange seeing all, because it really was like pretty much everybody.
It was amazing again. Yeah, it was absolutely. It did feel very like a very special occasion. I mean, it was 20. Well, it was 2014 from 1990, so 24 years since we played together. I mean, I joined the band in about 89, so I did it for the last couple of years. Before that was fantastic Steve Berry, who's absolutely brilliant, of course, and wrote a lot of the great music in the pad as well. So I did it for the last couple of years, and but it was I mean, 2014, it was really. It felt like a very special occasion, and it was great. I mean, I was really grateful to do it because I kind of felt when I was doing it in the 80s, kind of quite overwhelmed by how brilliant the whole thing was, and it was a real imposter syndrome thing for me. So I felt a little bit more ready to do it by 2014, 24 years later.
I often felt that. I felt like
I might be able to do a better job. So it was really a lot of fun for me. I had a great time. And of course, you know, I mean, I know a lot of the people in that band very well, and I've had long relationships with them. And
I guess to a certain extent, it never sort of went away, did it? Because a lot of those musicians have continued to work together and produce amazing things. But to keep that band together must have just been. I mean, ultimately, it just with everybody with so many creative people all doing their own projects. To get everyone back for that moment in time, it was a really magical thing. You know, we got the band back together.
It was great. Yeah, it was really great. It was great to you know, it felt it was very exciting, and you know, I remember Eddie saying he didn't sleep the night before the first rehearsal, and you know, we were. It was just lovely, and so some of the people I'd seen pretty much off and on in all the intervening periods. Some people I hadn't seen for years, and it was certainly not played with for years. So it was a lovely thing to do.
I got the
Really
sense
great.
everybody, it just slotted right back in again, or did it feel a bit like this is a bit different, or was it just?
No, it did. It felt.
Yeah.
I mean, the first rehearsal, it just felt. It's that thing of putting on an old pair of slippers. It felt right. It just felt right. And the music, of course. We played. We had some difficult new tunes to learn, but the old stuff. It came flooding back fairly quickly. So it was it was just a brilliant experience. I'm very glad we did it. So hopefully we won't have to wait another 24 years for the next. Well, there probably won't be
till the next gig.
I don't think that will happen in practice anyway, for obvious reasons. But,
well, look, let's watch this clip. And just before, we've got a few more people to say hello to on the chat. Lovely to see Stan Saltzman in the house. Hi, Stan. Thanks for tuning in. And Paul Dinage and Sarah Thomas. So welcome
great.
all. Let's watch this now. This is a clip from the 2014 reunion live at Ronnie Scott's. This is Loose Tubes. Yeah, and that was Loose Tubes there on one of their reunion concerts live at Ronnie Scott's Jazz Club, and that track was called Like Life, featuring a storming guitar solo there at the end from John Paricelli. And our guest on the show tonight, the amazing Steve Watts on the bass. And we're we were just talking while the track was playing there about in the old days when quite often Loose Tubes used to end their gigs with everybody getting up and wandering around the club playing. It was quite an anarchic sort of feel to the band, wasn't that? It was a strong kind of presence. And then often wandering out into the street. And so the gig would end with all the band out in the street.
That's right. That happened on a number of occasions. I mean, I was probably more often in the audience before I joined the band in those days. So I was very early on I went to some of the very early rehearsals of the band.
In Greenwich,
just to hang out. No, it wasn't in Greenwich actually. It was somewhere else, even before Greenwich. Right. I remember going to a couple when just after the sort of Graham Collier, because Graham Collier was the guy who initially got people together, and just to hang out because I was friends with some of the people in the band, and I was completely in awe of what I was hearing. In terms of the writing and everything, I couldn't believe that these young guys knew that much stuff and could write music like that. So I was just there sort of trying to soak it up as much as possible.
I had
and going to a lot of gigs as well. I had
because Steve Buckley was on the previous incarnation of the show. We were talking about, because he was there at the very beginning with Graham, when it was with Graham Collier and Django, and they were quite chumming. And Steve was saying, like, even then, like Django being being like gobsmacked at the talent and skill and knowledge of that Django had or has, you know, but at that young age.
Absolutely, and the voice as well, the kind of developed voice, which was kind of astonishing. I mean, how old was he? Like 22 or something? Yeah. Or no, a bit older than that, maybe 23 or 24 or something. But a kind of not just accomplished, but with something to say that was really distinctive. And you know, there was something. I suppose it was also one of the first times that I'd encountered jazz music that felt British to me.
Right. This is
It wasn't just derived. I mean, you know, of course, very much interested in and aware of the history and the heritage, but something about the music felt very British as well, and that was probably the first time I'd really encountered that and felt that very strongly.
I mean, there is it's drawing on a lot of themes as well, isn't it? There's that classical musical tradition, European classical music, and then, like you say, that British kind of folk music almost. I guess John Sermon, perhaps a little bit prior to that, had kind of cast a bit of a path.
There were definitely people doing it before that, but I wasn't aware of them at the time.
No, I'm just thinking of like influences maybe on Django and everybody at that time. These would have been the touch of things, but to pull those things together, I mean, let's talk about Django, and I'll tell you what, before we get onto this, because we're going to play this track which I think just really sums up just what we're talking about. Before we get to that, can we talk, do you mind just saying a little bit like maybe about how you got started and perhaps the beginnings of how you got into playing music and why the bass maybe, and what and if there was anything that kind of happened that brought you to that, and then perhaps like meeting those guys as well.
I suppose I started off like a lot of people. I picked up an electric bass. I was into rock music when I was a teenager, so I picked up an electric bass and I was learning to play rock stuff, and then I gradually got into things like funk and soul, and then things like Jaco Pastorius and
quite a natural path then from that
but it's kind of weird because I was listening to things like Weather Report. I was listening to it in quite a sort of naive, bass-centered way. All like, isn't Jaco incredible? But I didn't really notice that much about how incredible the other guys were. So it wasn't until a bit later.
I can see that.
So things I do remember seeing Oscar Peterson on TV
624, was it, or something like that?
No, it would have been. I think he had his own show in the 70s, and I remember seeing Niels Henning, Austin Pedersen, and Ray Brown on that show, and thinking, "Oh, I like the sound of that thing. I want to have a go on one of those." And so I went to school, and in those days, you could be lucky enough to do that. And I went to school and said I want to play double bass, and they found one for me that I could borrow, and found a teacher for me who was an orchestral player actually. And so I started to learn classical double bass, and that's what I ended up doing. Ended up at Guildhall studying classical double bass. And without going on about it too much, while I was there, the year below me, there was a guy called Guy Chambers, who was a sort of jazz pianist, was into composing and played jazz piano. And he introduced me to Ian Ballamy. He got a little gig, and he booked Ian on the gig. And that was my way in. Actually, Guy Chambers, you may have heard the name before, because
I recognise the name. I can't say I know him, but I do know.
Well, he made the terrible career decision of going into pop music, and ended up writing and producing all of Robbie Williams's massive hits.
Okay, yeah.
So he really suffered.
I was going to say, but he's kicking himself now, isn't he? Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. Look at what he could have won.
Exactly. Yeah.
But so he introduced me to Ian.
So was Ian at the Guildhall, or was
Ian? At the time, Ian was 17. I was 21.
Right.
And we did this gig, and I just got on really well with Ian, and ended up, I think I ended up booking him for this little pub gig that I was doing, with a sort of folky pop duo type thing. And then we started hanging out together, and I kind of had my epiphany about jazz by hanging out with Ian. And actually it was hearing him singing along to, weirdly enough, Dave Liebman and Steve Grossman, very out saxophone playing, and Ian singing extremely precisely, exactly what they were playing. And I suddenly thought, oh Jesus, I can hear that now. I'd never. And so it was a bit like the lights went on, and I thought, oh crikey, yeah, this is something I really want to find out more about this. So and that was the beginning, really. That's how I started to meet people through Ian.
I mean, you're known as a double bass player, and particularly jazz, but you still play the electric bass, right? I mean, that's something that kept going. I mean, I know you don't get it out a great deal now, but I've seen you on it. Maybe it's a summer school thing that you keep. Well,
Nicky Isles got me to play it recently, and I love to play it. Actually, I don't get much chance playing. I've played it a bit with Adam as well, because I've played quite a lot of South African music, which is another thing that was quite a big influence, certainly on Django and Steve Arguelles and people like that. And so I occasionally get the electric out and have reason to play it. I mean, it's horses for courses. I love the instrument. It's the best instrument for playing some certain things on.
Yeah. Tool for the job, like
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Double bass is better for some things, and electric's better for other things.
Yeah. Good point.
Some of my favourite players are electric players, actually. Still now. I mean, I love people like Pino Palladino and Rob Malarkey. I think is absolutely fantastic player,
isn't he? Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah. He's another precocious talent that stood out a long way when we were at college. Yes. Okay. So we've got this track. So after Loose Tubes, Django had Delightful Precipice, which is a sort of not obviously as big as Loose Tubes, which was a fairly large ensemble.
It was big,
to keep to that sort of thing. But it is a sort of large, medium to large ensemble. And we've got a track here that you've picked out from the album Summer Fruits and Unrest, and this is a track called Little Petherick. And so this is 1993 release, or recorded around
about then. I can't remember exactly, but sometime then.
So this features obviously Django Bates on the piano, keyboards, and the horn. Mark Lockhart on.
No, it's actually Ian Ballamy.
Oh, what?
Yeah, the listing's wrong on that particular thing.
Oh, all right, good. As long as
It's
it wasn't me that screwed it up.
yeah, no, it wasn't you. It wasn't you. It's Ian. It's Ian Ballamy
It's Ian,
and Martin
okay.
France. Yeah,
Oh,
Martin France
sorry,
and
Mark.
myself.
Sorry, Ian. So, yeah, okay, Ian Ballamy, who we're going to see some more in a minute as well. So, and yourself and Martin France, who we'll talk more about because obviously you've got a long-standing connection there. But there's just something about this track. I mean, this is a really beautiful piece of music. It's called Little Petherick, which is a very little town down in or village really in Cornwall, isn't it? Was there a visit down there that inspired this or something? Because
I think yeah, it was family holidays for Django. Right. I think,
and he's got this incredible way of. I think one of the things that stands out for me about Django is his sound world is just huge, isn't it? He brings all these things in. So we've got church bells ringing and birds tweeting, and he really creates this sort of soundscape. And I'm just going to ask, maybe we talk about it afterwards about what was put on and what was played. But I just think in terms of capturing an essence, and you talked before about like the Englishness of of the jazz, like that sort of sound. I think this just is just perfect. So here we go. This little Petherick. Wonderful, absolutely beautiful. And that was Little Petherick, which is from the album Summer Fruits and Unrest, which is by Delightful Precipice, which is the Django Bates, one of his bands. And it features on the bass my guest, Steve Watts. Yeah, we were just chatting while that was on. And it's just wonderful writing, just beautiful. That, like we were saying, that sort of all those influences and capturing the sound and very pastoral kind of feel to it, isn't it? In the great tradition, as it were.
Yeah.
And so obviously there's some overdubs there from the recordings, but there's a little keyboard thing in there as well, and which I thought was a church organ. I thought, well, that was good, and then it started bending all the notes. But you said it's a synth that he was using.
I think, yeah, I'm pretty sure it would be a Prophet 5 that he was using Prophet 5 synth at that time.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty sure that's what it is. The kind of slightly, a bit like an accordion type sound as well.
Yeah.
Bendy notes.
Yeah. That sort of almost folky sort of thing as well.
Yeah.
Like with it.
Yeah.
Wonderful playing, Steve. I mean, I have to say again, just beautiful, and your sound and touch and your sound is just so such a big thing, which we'll get onto. I'm gonna ask you about that, but in a bit. But just playing with those musicians. So again, Martin France on the drums, someone who I notice out of the 6 tracks we're going to play, he's on 5 of them with you. So that says something.
We did a lot together. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's something else, isn't he? He's got his own sound, and I think I guess like what I think's interesting about musicians, about when you're developing your sound, and we were talking about this with Stan last week, is like how much of it is a conscious thing of you finding your sound, or is it the thing it kind of evolves through the projects you do, or the music you play, you have to approach in a certain way that then leads into you find a way to play that music, or do you find you play very differently when you play these different lines? But bearing in mind you're playing with the same musicians a lot, so I don't know. I just think that's quite interesting.
Yeah, I guess the evolution thing is probably a better way of putting it. I mean, I don't know. I think, and I'm definitely played differently in different settings. And also recording as well is quite different. But I suppose one of the things, I mean, quite a lot of the things that we've picked to play are quite some of the more gentle things.
Yeah. Right.
And I think those sort of things, sound is incredibly important. You know,
yes.
The sound that and I always think that I in those sort of contexts, I try and sort of lay my sound into the overall sound. So I don't want it to sort of stick out. I don't want to be sort of, it's like me playing over there, and then I want my sound to sit inside the ensemble sound.
Do you think this may come from your classical training in the orchestral playing and things like that? That sort of thing of being part of an ensemble where you're one of many bass players.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I hadn't thought of it that way. It's possible, but I don't know. It's just that I notice sometimes. I don't like this. I don't like the feeling of my notes jumping out or on those kind of things. Yeah. I mean, it depends. If you're playing something that's more forceful and groovy, then you need to be a bit more muscular about the way you do it. But
I guess it's about thinking about the whole thing, isn't it? And not just thinking of yourself, really. Thinking of the bigger picture of the music.
It is, and also, you know, I think I've been very lucky because, for example, in that track we just heard, and also I think I play in a band with Norma Winston and Nicky Isles and Mike Walker, and and sometimes, and in that band, it's so beautiful that what's going on, that I know that all I need to do is play a root note in just the right place with a really nice sound, and it's going to sound great. But also I know that if I don't do that, it's going to upset the apple cart, you know. So it's a different kind of pressure, I suppose.
Taste
yeah,
and
it's
judgment,
just like,
isn't it? Really, is
yeah, and it's sort of trying to enhance the overall sound. But it's great when you're in a situation where you know that's all you need to do for it to sound really good. You know, all I need to do is just play a root note in tune with a nice sound in just the right place.
But the fact that you're happy to do that is probably why they want you there and not someone else.
Well, that must be it. I don't know.
Because it does take you. I think Dave Hassel often talks about this when I chat to him about music. He's saying you've got to give yourself to the music. You've got to be prepared to give yourself to the music.
Absolutely.
Play what the music requires, no more, no less. And just play what the music requires, not I'm going to do my thing, man. You know, I mean, there's time and place for that. But when you're talking about this, it's a thing about playing an ensemble playing, I think, isn't it? As opposed to sort of soloing kind of thing. I don't know.
Yeah,
not everyone can do it though. I don't think. I think it's nuance and it takes a lot of. I
think so. I mean, for me personally, I can remember in the very early days when I was first starting to play jazz, and I felt like every time I played, I had to play stuff that I'd never played before. Like I felt that was what you were supposed to do.
Oh, I see. Like
but for me, it was quite. And it was like, so, you know, in my head, I'd be wanting to play a root note and a fifth on the third beat of the bar. You know, like the simplest thing I could do. But I would be going, oh no, don't play that. It's too obvious. And consequently, I wasn't really connecting properly with the music. So for me, it was quite a big breakthrough to realize that it's okay to do that. It's okay to do that if it's the right thing to do. If it feels like the right thing to do, you can do it. And, you know, I mean, you listen to great players and they're not scared to play simply. You know, I was always, when I came to sort of transcribing things, I would hear, you know, for example, I transcribed a lot of Ray Brown in the early days, and I love Ray Brown. I think he's an absolutely definitive bass player. And you know, when I'd hear something and I think, oh, that sounds really amazing, and then I transcribe it, and it was a triad. It was like it couldn't get any simpler.
Yeah, you feel cheated, right?
The way it was played. You know, it's just like the way it's played, and just the taste involved in playing it there and in that way, and you know, of course, he did a lot of other things as well, but a lot of the time, the really cool stuff, you realise, well, it's a triad, but he's playing that note up an octave or something like that. You know, it's a simple thing made to sound really hip, and you know, that was a great revelation to me to realise that it was okay to do that. It's all right to do that if it enhances the music and it feels right. So,
but then then what you're really dealing with is touch and nuance and sound, and you know, obviously on basis or the intonation and things like that, all those technical, but really just that touch, I think, and that's where we get into what separates people, you know, in terms of their sound, I think, as well.
Yeah, sound
is articulation, or just these very
the fundamentals. It's the fundamental. I mean, sound is the most fundamental thing. The noise that you make to break the silence with. It doesn't. That's the most fundamental aspect of your playing. So, you know, if it's an ugly sound, doesn't matter what notes you play, it's going to sound ugly. But if you make a beautiful sound, you're off to a good start, because you don't need to do much, because you play a note and it sounds beautiful. So
and everyone smiles at you.
You know, and I love players who play like that. You know, Ian Ballamy is a great example of that for me. Someone who makes such a beautiful sound that you're off to a flyer immediately. And you know, Coltrane or Miles, what a fantastic sound, you know. Beautiful sound. And all those bass players that I love, you know, Ray Brown and Ron Carter and Charlie Hayden and all these people, you know, great, fantastic, beautiful sound.
Right. Fantastic. Well, I see. I mean, this is exactly. It's great, and I really find this interesting, talking to great musicians as yourself about these sort of things. I think this is really what it's all about. But let's move on. So let's look at we've got a video now. So this is with Billy Jenkins that you've turned me on to this video we're going to watch. It was for a BBC TV documentary. Is that jazz?
It was
show?
It was a little short-lived,
606.
short-lived series of jazz performances on BBC Two, I think it was. Yeah.
So this is from 1998, and so this is the amazing Billy Jenkins. Who, let's talk a little bit about. Let's play a bit of this. Ian Ballamy on the saxophone again. Martin France on the drums again.
Yeah.
And Dave Ram on the keyboard.
That's right. Yeah.
And this is one of Billy's tunes, which is called the Greenwich One-Way System. And I'll say no more about that.
Shut up! You're not in the 606. Shut your eyes. You're in the Greenwich One-Way System.
Wonderful, absolutely marvelous. And if you're new to Billy Jenkins, then that's obviously something, that's probably quite an amazing revelation there. And true, so that piece of music was called the Greenwich One-Way System. I think it just perfectly sums it up. And what an absolutely amazing musician and character as well, who was quite an influence on quite a lot of people, I think. Definitely. And we was just chatting briefly, but I was listening to a podcast recently, and they were with an interview with Chris Batchelor, who was talking about Billy and how, we can talk a bit about this whole Greenwich scene, and because it all kind of came together, didn't it, at the time? And people weren't quite sure who he was at first when he turned up, but he had this anarchic sort of chaotic kind of thing going on, which actually, as you just said, was actually very disciplined, because that music, that's not just random free jazz. There's some very tightly played phrasing in there, isn't there? Within all that sound, you're playing these very sort of quite syncopated rhythms in unison together, tutti phrasing, which is very hard to do.
Yeah, and as a ferociously fast tempo that as well. Martin going, I mean, Billy, it sort of sounded chaotic in a way, but it was very disciplined and very organised also in a way. So we by that time we'd been playing together for quite a while, and Billy had a whole system of kind of cues, and you had to be very alert because things could happen at the drop of a hat, and if you weren't paying attention, it was too late. So you had to be really paying attention all the time. But so it was very disciplined.
So he would signal with the band, and you'd spin on.
There were lots of signals, and there were musical cues, and there were visual cues, and there were.
That sounds a bit like
running
Zappa.
Gags and
Zappa did a lot of that, didn't he? With the different signs and things he would give the band. Yeah.
And I mean, it's interesting with Billy because on the one hand, I think he was a brilliant sort of antidote for that sort of poker-faced earnestness.
Yeah. Well, that's what Chris was saying. Yeah, like
people associated with jazz. I mean, Billy was in a way he was quite a sort of central figure because he ran this rehearsal studio called Woodwharf
in Greenwich,
right, which was right by the river. And Loose Tubes used to rehearse there, but so did everybody. I mean, everyone used to use it, and so Billy was always around. So he kind of got to know everyone on the scene, and. And started using people from the scene. That's how we kind of all got involved, I suppose. And then, but there was a thing with Billy when we used to go on tour. We had this little band bus, and he used to play these. We used to spend ages watching these motorsport crash videos. And Billy's really into motorsport. I mean, he's a big motorsport fan, as I am as well. Actually, and certainly was at that time. And so we watched these videos, and it was like. Amazing kind of extraordinary crashes, not people getting killed or anything, but just like it was spectacular. And after a while I thought I realized that there was a really strong connection between this stuff and what he was doing musically, because it's like this is the analogy. It's like when you're watching motorsport, say you're watching Formula One and the guys are going round and round in circles, and when it's all under control, it's a bit boring unless you're an initiate. If you're an initiate, you can get into the lines that they're taking and the technical aspect of it and all that. But it's a bit boring for your average punter. But as soon as two wheels touch at high speed, all this kinetic energy that is already there, it's there, but it's invisible. But as soon as they touch, it explodes into view, and everybody loves that bit. Like you don't have to be a motorsport fan to go, wow, when that stuff starts happening, that sudden explosion of energy. And that's what he was doing. That's what he would do in the music. So he would always, be motoring along, and he'd throw a spanner in the works because he wanted that kind of that chaotic explosion of energy where you didn't quite know what was going to happen and how it was all going to turn out. And he managed to sort of do that in the music, and it was very exciting for audiences and also funny. I mean, he wasn't scared to be funny and humorous and So
but I mean,
it's great.
He must have, you've got to have really good musicians to do that. Otherwise, it's just a mess, isn't it? So I mean, he's really putting you guys through your paces. But the fact that you're pulling this off is a testimony to your skills and like you say, to make it look like chaos, but to have that very and also you guys playing together. I mean, I've talked about this before, the bass and the drums, having that connection and being able to trust each other and like to that almost telepathy that you get. I would imagine that was quite useful in a band like Billy's, with working with Martin and yourself.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, we kind of, we'd been playing together for quite a while, and we knew each other's playing and trusted each other, and it's just that we kind of also we were the kind of straight men in a way. We had to we just had to do what was required of us but be alert and catch everything and try and be on the case and play what was required of us. And that Billy also, he wrote some great tunes and nice pieces,
the writing's very strong, isn't it? I mean
it's very strong. I mean, it's kind of, it's not
flippant or sort of silly, is it? Although it comes across, he's got this whole kind of demeanor on stage, but his music's very, very serious music.
Yeah, I think so. Billy's a deadly serious person. He's
serious artist.
He is, and very serious, and also very clever and very intellectual about what he's doing as well. So it wasn't, a lot of planning went into all the gigs. Each gig would have a lot of. From Billy, a lot of planning about how he wanted to shape it and how and things that he wanted to happen within the gig. So it was, it was very interesting to work with him, and really liberating experience and fun, loads of fun. We had loads of fun playing in that band.
I can imagine it's not the sort of gig you want to turn up as a dep on, though, is it, for a one-nighter? And
no, and that didn't really. That didn't really happen. Work. It was always quite a settled. It was always pretty settled.
Yeah, I bet.
Lineup. There were various guests coming in, but this core band was the same for quite a long time.
So, is it fair to say that Billy had a bit of an influence on the Tubes as a whole, then, in terms of bringing that because the Tubes were very that energy, that chaotic kind of rebellious streak, or was it just in the air? I mean, was this the sort of thought of it about?
It was in the air. I think it was in the air. I think I'm pretty
fed off each other.
Yeah, and I would say I was pretty much sure that Ian Ballamy was influenced by that. I think, but yeah, I think it was in the air. I think that's probably the best way to put it. It was in the air, and Billy was such a one-off. That you couldn't sort of copy it, but something about that energy and that kind of abandon was definitely taken up by other people, I think.
Yeah, great, wonderful. Well, folks, if you're not familiar, do check out Billy Jenkins. He's got a lot of great albums out there. Famously from Bromley resident, so not far from here, and. He wrote an album all about Bromley, didn't he? And how
sounds like Bromley.
Sounds like Bromley, and there's one called "They Built Something Through My Back Garden." Was it?
They built a ring road in my garden.
There you go.
Yeah, and then he produced another album a few years later called "Still Sounds Like Bromley."
That's it. So and he's got a lot of music out there. He's got a good website, and so do check him out. So moving on, I want to look at this. We've got this wonderful album, All Men Are Men, which was an Ian Ballamy album, and that features Django and yourself on the bass, and Martin France again, so it's a quartet, and it just really is incredible music, and I'm really glad you picked this track, because it's certainly something I've always thought was a really favourite track. So it's a complete masterpiece, and it sort of moves through keys. We were talking earlier a bit about maybe a touch of the Kenny Wheeler influence as well around that time on the writing of everyone, really. I mean, I would have said, you can hear it a bit in you can hear definitely. It in Django and in Ian, and this has got that kind of how Kenny's got those great sort of anthems that they and this idea of the band playing. I think it's just that ensemble playing together. The way you move. The time is there, but it's kind of free, and you play together. And then you go through all these key changes, and then you get this sort of gradual accelerando through it as well. And again, people may not appreciate it. That's really hard to pull off in a studio thing like that as well for a record. Is there anything you could remember particularly from that, or was it just
very much?
Was it a tough session, or was it something that you just did a lot? You played together a lot.
It wasn't tough. I mean, we played together a lot. We recorded the album in Germany, in Bremen, in Germany, and it was a very nice studio. It was for me, it was an unusual experience, particularly because the way it worked out, I ended up being upstairs in a room on my own, but with absolutely no visual contact whatsoever.
Wow.
There was no window in the room. There was no monitor in the room,
goodness.
visual monitor. I had headphones on, and that album has got a lot of rubato, flexi time, out of time.
Which normally you'd be relying on a lot of
exactly like a lot of visual cues. So at first it was a bit, oh crikey, how's this going to work? But actually, it was a brilliant experience for me, because I realised that you could just sort of shut your eyes and listen and feel. And again, we'd been playing together for quite a while, but
I think that's
it's like the music breathes, so you can sort of feel the breaths.
It's astonishing
in the music. So so it was. I had to trust that I could feel how it was going to breathe, and not wait for someone to go like that to nod. And actually it came out, there's a lot of very nice things on it that came out really good, and I actually think maybe it wouldn't have come out as good if I had been able to see what was going on. I don't know, maybe, but it was certainly an interesting experience. And since that time, I remember I sat in on a string quartet workshop once, where the teacher was saying that his teacher had been in a very famous string quartet. I can't remember which one it was, but they used to rehearse with their backs to each other, so they couldn't see each other. So, and the way, he described it in a very similar way. So it was so that they could, just by listening,
very intense, listening,
they could feel those, the rallentandos, and they could just feel it together. And again, they'd been playing together for a long time, but. So it was, but there's some nice things on that album.
It's wonderful. It's a masterpiece, absolute masterpiece. Okay. Well, let's listen to a little bit. I was only going to. I'll talk about this afterwards, because I don't want to. I want people just to hear this track. So if you don't know this is All Men Are Men, which is Ian. Is it the Ian Ballamy Quartet, or was that
the band was called Balloon Man? But I don't know whether, Ian Ballamy. I think the album just Ian Ballamy, All Men Are Men. Yeah.
Here we go. Fantastic. That was All Men for Our Men. All Men Are Men by Ian Ballamy, and it features Django Bates on the piano, Martin France on the drums, and my guest Steve Watts on the double bass. Absolutely beautiful record that, and incredible playing. How you all move together as an ensemble, and as Steve's just revealed, he was locked away in a cupboard somewhere and couldn't see anyone as well. So I don't know how you do that. It's absolutely incredible, beautiful. And there were some overdubs there on the saxophones as well at the beginning and the end.
Yeah.
And we were just saying like how Ian and Django and these and all of you guys are not afraid to do that. It's not not like this purist approach to it. It's just sound, right? It's just sounds world, and if we can get that sound, I think that's
they weren't sort of dogmatic about we're only allowed to put out what we did played live together. I mean, we did all the rhythm tracks are all us playing together live, but they weren't averse to putting overdubs on top if they felt that would enhance what the music and what they were trying to say. So
very effective there with the layered up reeds and
with the sort of echo effect and all
the
that.
Breath, the breath sort of saxophone. Beautiful. Yeah. Okay, well, time's marching on, unfortunately. So we've got just a couple more short tracks, and I mean, there's so many projects, and you've been mentioned a few times on this show already from our other guests as this incredible musician and bass player who's someone said you're the linchpin, between all these amazing British jazz supergroups that you're part of, and that your sound features within that music so prominently. It's really amazing, Steve. That your output and your what you've achieved and what you've done. And that you're such a key part of so many of these ensembles, which we haven't had a chance to play, but we have. I did play the Printmakers on a show a few shows back with Nikki.
Okay.
So we've heard some of that. Of course, I would have wanted to mention quickly the Kirk Lightsey trio as well, which was amazing with the wonderful Dave Wickens on drums, who we dearly miss. Yeah. And I remember seeing you guys at the Vortex a few times, and that was just, again, a wonderful
brilliant
band.
Yeah, loved it.
Playing, and again, that sense of playing together as an ensemble, and really that telepathy of hearing each other. And again, like presumably that's quite a different. So working with someone like Dave Wickens from Martin France, and you find that brings different things out of you, or you're
definitely very much so. Yeah, definitely. That was a real fun thing to do as well. And again, we were playing together for quite a long time. Yeah. We got to know each other, and Kirk, once you get to know what at first, I was a bit sort of flummoxed.
He's quite a force of nature, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. But once you get to know what he's up to, then it's really a lot of fun to play with.
But I remember thinking. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say. I mean, for me, it was. I felt, I feel really privileged to have played with so many of the people that I've played with, but and him. For me, that was a great experience in the sense that I think he's someone who I regard as having. He was there firsthand. It's like firsthand with Kirk, because he would tell me stories. He grew up in Detroit. He was from Detroit, and him and his friends would bunk off church early. They'd leave church early to go up the road to hear Aretha Franklin singing in her dad's church. Yeah, and so
he knew all those cats, didn't he? And he played on loads of those records.
He played with all the
sessions.
Motown.
Yeah,
he played with all the Motown guys. He's on some of the early Motown stuff, but he knew James Jamerson. He knew, and so it was an amazing sort of connection. And when he plays, when Kirk plays, something is going on. There's something going on there
He's
that
fearless, isn't he? I think that's what it is. And
he is,
but he's got that breadth to draw on as well. So he's got that, you know.
He has. It's the weight. There's a tremendous amount of weight. It's not what he plays. It's the way he plays it.
Yeah.
You know, he's just. He is a great improviser and has a very distinctive voice on the instrument.
Yeah. And I think that him and Dave
musician.
used to just really spark off each other a lot, didn't they, as well? That was great just to watch that.
Definitely.
Like in the big smiles, you know, coming across when David plays something and Kirk would be like, oh, you know, and then you're like in the middle, kind of like holding this whole thing together.
No, such fun. And Kirk's just he's full of life as a musician and as a person. You know, he's a very special man. And, you know, he's just full of joy and you know, he's got all these little sayings like, if you're not having fun by now,
that's it.
Dot.
Yeah.
And actually, you know, I've learned a lot from him, and I've had some great times with him, and he's a lovely man.
Of course, there's that great album that was recorded at Lee Goodall's studio, isn't there? Which is the trio, which people can find, I'm sure. So, but we're gonna play something else now, which is another group which you're closely involved with Julian Aguilar's, and there's an octet, and this is a fairly recent album. It's just released last year, I believe.
Well, that's a re-release, I think. It's actually an older one, but it's I think it's been re-released. Yeah, it was recorded sometime in the, I think, late 90s or early 2000s.
Fantastic.
Maybe early 2000s. I can't remember exactly.
And again, a stellar lineup. They've got Django Bates on the tenor horn there, Ian Dixon on the bass clarinet and tenor sax, Mark Bassi on the trombone, Mario Lagina on piano.
Lagina,
Mario Lagina, somebody I'm not familiar with.
Portuguese,
Right, wonderful. Great player. I mean, of course, Mike Walker on the guitar, yourself on the bass, and again Martin France on the drums. And this is a track called Mole People. Quite tricky, very syncopated, and you're playing the melody here on this, aren't you? It's just this is quite a fearsome piece. Here we go, Mole People. I hope you're enjoying the show. I just want to take a moment to tell you about a new way that you can help support me do this, and that is through patreon.com. That's right, I've got an account now, so the link's below here, patreon.com Buster Birch, and if you go along to there, you can now make donations by Visa credit card, so you don't have to use PayPal if you don't want to do that. And the advantage of Patreon is that once you do it once, it will automatically deduct on a per show basis. So instead of having to fill in the forms every week, if you want to make a regular donation, then that will just automatically deduct straight to your credit card each per show. And that is hugely helpful to me because it means I know that I've got a certain amount coming in every time I do a show, and that really helps me plan ahead and keeps the viable sustainability of the show going. There's two levels of sponsorship. There's my silver and gold membership. All of my Patreon supporters will get a big thank you personally from me live on the show, and the gold member sponsors will get an additional Spotify playlist which will be sent to you each week. It's something that I'm putting together. It's personally curated by me and will feature lots more albums by the guest artists each week. So it's a great opportunity to get to know this music much better. If you're really enjoying the show and you like the little tasters that you're hearing, that's a great way to get to know this music even more and enjoy in full comfort the full sound of the full albums. Thanks very much. Back to the show. That's right. I nearly forgot to get my little ad in there. And the show we've just about run out of time now, so we're gonna wrap it up here. It's been absolutely wonderful, Steve, having this time to sit and chat to you about music, and really appreciate you coming along and giving up your time for us and sharing your music. I hope it's been fun for you too.
Oh yeah, no, thanks. It's been great. Yeah, thank you. Thanks for asking me. It's great.
Oh no, it's a pleasure, and so you've got this last. We're going to finish off. We're going to play out with a video, which is a current project, and this was with Chris Batchelor, and his new project, which is called Zoetic.
Yeah,
is that right?
Yeah,
got that right?
That's right.
And it features Margaret on the viola and John Paracelli on the guitar, Paul Clavis on percussion. And so how did this come about? What was this is just another side project that Chris is kind of
it's
working
one of Chris's brainchild. Sort of with just unusual instrumentation and just opens up. It's a very open sounding thing, and just different sound world, I guess. Yeah. And a very nice combination of the viola with the trumpet and guitar.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and the percussion as well, just sort of very atmospheric and again, like you say, sort of not quite gentle sort of mute and different sound of combinations of instruments. It's interesting. Yeah. Okay. Well, look, everybody. Thanks very much for joining us tonight, and. I'll be back next week. I've got all the guests booked up now till Christmas, I think, or till December, which I've not quite put up on the website yet. I'll put those up soon. And if you're not on the mailing list, do join the mailing list. You'll get the invite every week, 1 hour before the show, and you can watch us live. If not, you can check us out on YouTube afterwards. So thanks again, everybody. Take care of yourselves. And once more, ladies and gentlemen, I give you the wonderful Steve Watts. Thanks, mate. Thanks for coming
Cheers.
along.
Thanks, Buster.
And we'll leave you with this video of a session with Zoetic, and this is a track called Washington Lion.
Thank you.